The phone rang at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. Zoe Thompson was reviewing marketing campaigns in her corner office when her personal cell buzzed with an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Is this Zoe Cole?" The voice was sharp, professional, and completely unfamiliar. "Thompson Cole, yes. Who's calling?" "This is Patricia Martinez from Sunset Recovery Services. I'm calling about a debt collection matter for Dolores Cole. Our records show you as the emergency contact and co-signer on several accounts." Zoe's stomach dropped. She had never co-signed anything for her mother-in-law. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. I haven't co-signed anything for Dolores." "Ma'am, I'm looking at documentation here showing your signature on credit applications totaling $50,000. These accounts are now in default, and casino markers from the Riverside Resort are also outstanding." Casino markers. Gambling debt. Zoe's mind raced. She knew Dolores liked to play the slot machines occasionally, but $50,000? And her signature on applications she never signed? "Can you send me copies of these documents?" Zoe asked, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "Absolutely. I'll email them right now. Mrs. Cole, we need to discuss payment arrangements. The total amount due is $47,832, not including interest and fees." After hanging up, Zoe stared at her computer screen, unable to focus on the colorful marketing graphics. Her phone chimed with the email from the debt collector. With shaking fingers, she opened the attachments. There was her signature. On 4 different credit card applications. Applications she had never seen, never signed, never agreed to. But that was definitely her signature, or a very good forgery of it. Her marriage to Brandon Cole had always felt too good to be true. He was charming, successful as an accountant, and seemed to worship the ground she walked on. They had met 3 years ago at a professional networking event, and he had pursued her relentlessly. She was a successful marketing director at a major firm, financially independent, and had always been careful with money. When they married 2 years ago, Brandon had suggested combining their finances for simplicity. He handled most of the bills, he said, since he was good with numbers. Zoe had access to their joint accounts, but Brandon managed the day-to-day transactions. She trusted him completely. Now, sitting in her office with forged documents on her screen, that trust felt like the most expensive mistake of her life. Zoe grabbed her purse and headed for the door. She needed answers, and she needed them now. The drive home to their suburban house took 30 minutes in afternoon traffic. 30 minutes of Zoe's mind spinning through every financial conversation she'd had with Brandon over the past 2 years. Had there been signs? Warning signals she'd ignored? She remembered Dolores always seeming to have new jewelry, designer purses, expensive clothes despite supposedly living on a fixed income. Brandon had explained that she was good at finding sales, and had savings from Dad's life insurance. It had seemed plausible at the time. Brandon's car was in the driveway when she arrived. He was supposed to be at work until 6, but there he was, sitting at their kitchen table with his laptop open and papers scattered around him. He looked up when she walked in, and she saw something flicker across his face. Guilt? Fear? "Hey babe, you're home early," he said, closing the laptop quickly. "Everything okay?" "I got an interesting phone call today," Zoe said, setting her purse down and crossing her arms. "From a debt collector." The color drained from Brandon's face. "A debt collector? About what?" "About $50,000 in gambling debts. From your mother. With my signature on the credit applications." Brandon stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. "Zoe, I can explain. You can explain how my signature got on documents I never signed? You can explain how your mother racked up $50,000 in casino debt using credit cards in my name." "It's not what it looks like," Brandon said, running his hands through his hair. "Mom was going through a rough patch. She just needed some help getting back on her feet." "By committing fraud? By forging my signature?" "She didn't forge anything," Brandon said quietly, not meeting her eyes. The truth hit Zoe like a physical blow. "You did it. You signed my name." Brandon's silence was confirmation enough. "How could you?" Zoe's voice cracked. "How could you steal from me? Use my credit? My name?" "I was going to pay it back," Brandon said desperately. "I thought she would get control of her gambling. I thought I could fix this before you ever found out." "Fix this? Brandon, this is fraud. This is identity theft. Do you understand what you've done to me? To my credit? My financial future? I love you, Zoe. I love my mom too. She raised me alone after Dad died. She sacrificed everything for me. I couldn't just watch her lose everything. So you decided I should lose everything instead? Brandon stepped toward her, reaching out. No, that's not. We can work through this. We're a team, remember? Zoe stepped back from his reach. A team? Teams don't steal from each other, Brandon. Teams don't commit crimes against each other. Don't be dramatic. It's not that serious. The casual dismissal of her feelings, her legitimate anger, her valid concerns about being the victim of fraud, it was like a slap. Zoe realized in that moment that she was looking at a stranger. The man she thought she knew, the man she thought loved and respected her, would never have done this. Get out, she said quietly. What? Get out of this house. Go to your mother's. Figure out your priorities. Zoe, please, let's talk about this rationally. Rationally? Zoe laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk rationally about how you committed fraud against your own wife? About how you've been stealing from me for months? Maybe years? I never stole from you. Then what do you call taking out credit cards in my name without my permission? What do you call forging my signature? What do you call using my credit to fund your mother's gambling addiction? Brandon's face hardened. Don't call her an addict. She just likes to play cards sometimes. $50,000 isn't, sometimes, Brandon. It's an addiction. And you enabled it by stealing from me. They stared at each other across the kitchen, and Zoe felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart was too angry to break. Something deeper. Her trust. Her belief that love meant protection, safety, partnership. I need you to leave, she said again. I need space to figure out what I'm going to do. Brandon grabbed his laptop and papers, shoving them into his work bag. Fine. But Zoe, don't do anything stupid. Don't make this bigger than it has to be. After he left, Zoe sat alone in her kitchen, surrounded by the silence of a life that had just exploded. She pulled out her phone and started making calls. First to her bank to check their joint accounts. Then to her credit card companies, to see what other surprises might be waiting for her. By the time the sun set, she had discovered the full scope of the betrayal. It wasn't just the $50,000 in gambling debt. Brandon had been slowly draining their joint savings, supposedly for investments, and his mother's medical bills. Their mortgage payment had been 2 months behind. Their credit card balances had tripled in the past year. Everything she thought she knew about her financial life was a lie. Everything she thought she knew about her husband was a lie. And tomorrow she would start figuring out what she was going to do about it. Zoe didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the forged signatures, the mounting debts, the casual way Brandon had dismissed her feelings. By 5 a.m., she was sitting at her kitchen table with coffee and a legal pad, making lists. What she knew. What she needed to find out. What she needed to protect. Her phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. Can we talk? I'm at Mom's. This doesn't have to be a big deal. Zoe stared at the message. Big deal? Fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse weren't a big deal? She set the phone aside and continued writing. At 7 a.m., her sister Nina called. Hey girl, just checking in. How's married life? Nina. Zoe's voice cracked on her sister's name. I need help. What's wrong? What happened? Zoe told her everything. The debt collector's call, the forged signatures, Brandon's casual confession, his dismissal of her feelings. Nina listened without interrupting, getting angrier with each detail. That bastard, Nina finally said. Zoe, this is serious. This is criminal. I know. I called a lawyer this morning. I have an appointment at 10. Good. Do you want me to come with you? Yes. And Nina? Can I stay with you for a few days? I can't be in that house right now. Of course. Pack a bag and come over after your lawyer meeting. The law office was downtown in a gleaming high-rise. James Rivera was in his 50s, with kind eyes and a reputation for handling complex financial cases. He listened to Zoe's story, reviewed the documents she'd brought, and took notes. Mrs. Cole, what your husband did constitutes several crimes. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. You're the victim here and you have rights. What are my options? You can file criminal charges. You can divorce him and go after him for financial damages. You can demand immediate repayment of all fraudulent charges. Or some combination of all three. What would you recommend? Protect yourself first. Separate your finances immediately. Document everything. Then decide how far you want to take the legal action. Zoe spent the rest of the morning at the bank, closing joint accounts and opening new ones. She transferred her direct deposit, changed her passwords, and put alerts on her credit reports. With each step, she felt more in control, less like a victim. Brandon had been calling and texting all morning. She finally answered at noon. Zoe, thank God. We need to talk. Yes, we do. Meet me at the house at 2. I'll be there. Brandon was waiting on the front porch when she arrived. He looked like he hadn't slept either, his hair messy, his shirt wrinkled. He stood up when she got out of the car. Zoe, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. She walked past him and unlocked the front door. Come inside. They sat in the living room, the space between them feeling like a canyon. Zoe had her legal pad with her, her questions written out clearly. I need to know everything, she said. Every credit card, every loan, every account you opened or accessed using my information. Brandon sighed. It's not as bad as you think. Brandon, I spent this morning with a lawyer and at the bank. It's worse than I thought. So start talking. He told her about the credit cards first. 4 of them opened over the past year. Then the personal loan he'd taken out using her income information. The cash advances on their joint credit cards. The way he'd been using their mortgage payment money to cover his mother's gambling debts. How much total? Zoe asked. Maybe $70,000? But I can pay it back. I just need time. $70,000. Zoe wrote the number down. On top of our regular bills and mortgage. I know it sounds like a lot. It sounds like financial ruin, Brandon. It sounds like you've destroyed our credit and our future. Don't be dramatic. I make good money. I can fix this. There was that word again. Dramatic. Like her reaction to being defrauded by her own husband was somehow unreasonable. Tell me about your mother's gambling, Zoe said. Brandon's face closed off. That's not relevant. It's completely relevant. She's the reason you've been stealing from me. I haven't been stealing. What do you call it when you take money that doesn't belong to you without permission? It's different when it's family. When you're married. Zoe stared at him. You think being married gives you the right to commit fraud in my name? I think being married means we're supposed to support each other. Help each other's families. Support, yes. Commit crimes, no. Brandon, your mother has a gambling addiction. She needs treatment, not more money to lose. Don't talk about my mother like that. The defensiveness in his voice, the way he immediately protected the woman whose addiction had led him to commit crimes against his wife, told Zoe everything she needed to know about Brandon's priorities. I closed our joint accounts this morning, she said. Brandon's head snapped up. You what? I opened new accounts in my name only. I've removed myself from any joint credit cards. I've put fraud alerts on my credit reports. You can't do that. That money is ours. The money I earned at my job is mine. The money you earned at your job is yours. The money you stole from me in my name is money you're going to pay back. Brandon stood up, pacing to the window. Zoe, you're overreacting. We can work through this. Are you going to pay back the $70,000? Eventually, yes. When? I don't know. I need to figure out a payment plan. Are you going to stop giving money to your mother for gambling? Brandon was quiet for a long moment. She's my mother, Zoe. That's not an answer. She raised me alone. She sacrificed everything for me. I can't just abandon her when she needs help. She doesn't need help gambling, Brandon. She needs help stopping. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me. Brandon turned from the window, his face hard. My mother is the most important person in my life. She always has been. She always will be. She comes first. The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Zoe felt something cold settle in her stomach. Before your wife? She asked quietly. My mother raised me. She's been there my whole life. You've been here for 2 years. I'm your wife, Brandon. And she's my mother. Zoe looked at this man she'd married, this man she'd thought loved her, and saw clearly for the first time where she ranked in his priorities. She pulled out her phone. What are you doing? Brandon asked. I'm texting you something. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. I want you to respond honestly. Brandon's phone buzzed. He looked down, read the message, then looked back at her with confusion. What is this? It's a choice, Zoe said. Your mother's gambling addiction is destroying our marriage and our finances. You can choose to get her treatment and stop enabling her, or you can choose to keep funding her addiction. But if you choose her addiction, you lose me. Choose. Brandon stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he started typing. Zoe's phone buzzed with his response. She read it once, then read it again, making sure she understood correctly. I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother. The words were there in black and white, sent from her husband's phone to hers. A permanent record of exactly where she stood in his life. Well, Zoe said, her voice surprisingly steady. That makes things simple. Zoe, I didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that. She stood up, grabbing her purse and keys. You made your choice, Brandon. Now I'll make mine. Where are you going? To make some phone calls. Zoe headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Brandon? That text you just sent me? My lawyer is going to find it very interesting. She left him standing in their living room, his phone still in his hand, finally understanding that his choice had consequences. And Zoe was just getting started. Zoe sat in Nina's guest bedroom that evening, surrounded by paperwork, bank statements, and her laptop. The full scope of Brandon's financial betrayal was becoming clearer with each document she reviewed. Look at this, she said, showing Nina a bank statement. Our savings account had $12,000 6 months ago. Now it has $400. Nina peered over her sister's shoulder. Where did it all go? According to these transactions, ATM withdrawals. Big ones. Always at the casino. Zoe highlighted the amounts. 500 here, 1,000 there, 1,500 the week before our anniversary. He was gambling too? No, I think he was giving cash to Dolores. Look at the pattern, always on the days she went to Riverside Resort. Nina shook her head. Zoe, he's been systematically draining your accounts. There's more. Zoe pulled up another document on her laptop. Remember that investment opportunity he told me about? The one he said would double our money? Yeah, you were excited about it. There was no investment. He took $20,000 from our retirement account and it went straight to paying off one of the credit cards he'd opened in my name. So he was using your money to pay debt he created by stealing your identity? Exactly. It's like a shell game but with my financial future. Zoe's phone buzzed with another text from Brandon. Please come home. We can work this out. She deleted it without responding and went back to her paperwork. The mortgage statements were particularly devastating. Their house payment was $2,800 a month, and Brandon had been telling her it was current. In reality, they were 3 months behind with late fees and penalties piling up. The total amount due was over $11,000. He was supposed to be handling the bills, Zoe said, calculating numbers on her legal pad. I was giving him my share every month, and he was using that money for his mother's gambling instead of our mortgage. Can you catch up the payments? Maybe if I liquidate my individual retirement account. But Nina, that's my future. My security. And I'd be using it to clean up a mess that isn't mine. Zoe's phone rang. James Rivera, her lawyer. Mrs. Cole, I've been reviewing the documents you sent over. We need to move quickly to protect your interests. What do you mean? Your husband has access to several accounts that could still be drained. Your joint credit cards, for instance. And there's the matter of the house. What about the house? It's in both your names, but if the mortgage goes into foreclosure, it will damage your credit even though the missed payments aren't your fault. So what do I do? We file for legal separation immediately. That protects you from any future debts he might incur. We also demand immediate cessation of all fraudulent activity and full restitution of stolen funds. And if he refuses? Then we pursue criminal charges and civil damages. After ending the call, Zoe made a decision that surprised even her. She called the mortgage company. I'd like to make a payment on my account, she told the representative. Certainly. I see you're currently behind by $11,247. How much would you like to pay? I want to know something first. If I pay the full amount to bring the account current, can I remove my husband from the mortgage? That would require refinancing the loan in your name only. You'd need to qualify based on your income alone. Zoe had run the numbers. Her salary was enough to carry the mortgage by herself. What would I need to do? You'd need to apply for a new loan. The current loan would be paid off and replaced with a new one in your name only. And my husband would have no claim to the house? As long as he signs a quitclaim deed transferring his ownership interest to you. What if he doesn't sign willingly? That would be a matter for the courts to decide. Zoe spent the next hour on the phone with mortgage brokers, getting pre-approved for a refinance loan. Her credit was still good. The fraudulent accounts hadn't had time to completely destroy her rating yet. She could qualify for a loan that would pay off the existing mortgage and give her sole ownership of the house. But first she had some other calls to make. Riverside Resort Casino, how can I help you? I'd like to speak to someone about problem gambling resources. Of course. Let me transfer you to our responsible gaming department. The representative explained their voluntary exclusion program, a way for problem gamblers to ban themselves from the casino permanently. All it took was a form, a photo ID, and the person's own signature. What if someone wanted to have a family member excluded? Zoe asked. That's more complicated. We'd need documentation showing you have legal authority to act on their behalf, like a power of attorney or guardianship. What about if someone has been gambling with fraudulent funds? That would be a matter for law enforcement and our security department. Zoe's next call was to the local police department. She asked to speak to someone about financial crimes. I'd like to report identity theft and fraud, she told the detective who took her call. What happened? Zoe explained the situation: the forged signatures, the unauthorized accounts, the systematic theft of her money. The detective took notes and asked for documentation. Ma'am, this sounds like a significant case. Can you come in to file a formal report? Yes. But I should mention the perpetrator is my husband. That doesn't change the fact that crimes were committed. Fraud is fraud, regardless of relationship. That evening, Nina helped Zoe pack more of her belongings. They worked quietly, methodically, emptying her closet and gathering important documents. Are you sure about this? Nina asked. The criminal charges, I mean. He stole from me, Nina. He committed fraud in my name. He chose his mother's gambling addiction over our marriage. What choice do I have? You could try counseling. Marriage therapy. Zoe held up her phone, showing Brandon's text from that afternoon. I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother. He already made his choice, she said. Now I'm making mine. Her phone rang. Brandon. Zoe, please come home. Mom is really upset about all this. Your mother is upset? She didn't mean for it to go this far. She's willing to make payments. Brandon, your mother doesn't have money to make payments. That's why she's been gambling with stolen funds. Don't call them stolen funds. We're married. What's yours is mine. Actually, what's mine is mine. And what you took without permission is stolen. Zoe, you're being unreasonable. Family helps family. You're right, Zoe said. Family does help family. So I'm helping myself by protecting my finances from further theft. What does that mean? Zoe looked around Nina's guest room, at the boxes of her belongings, at the legal documents spread across the bed. Tomorrow she would file the police report. Tomorrow she would start the refinancing process. Tomorrow she would begin the legal separation proceedings. It means I canceled the mortgage payment for this month, she said calmly. You what? I called the mortgage company and canceled the automatic payment. I also had the car payment canceled and the insurance. Zoe, you can't do that. We'll lose the house. The car. We were already losing the house, Brandon. You just didn't tell me. And the car? The one that's in my name that I've been paying for? I'm picking it up tomorrow? You're being crazy. I'm being smart. For the first time in this marriage, I'm protecting myself instead of trusting you to do it. Mom needs that car. She has medical appointments. Your mom can take the bus. Or you can buy her a car with your own money. I don't have money for a car. Then maybe you shouldn't have spent $70,000 of my money on her gambling debts. Brandon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Harder. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, Zoe, we can play it that way. But remember, I know where all our money is. I know how to access our accounts. I can make things very difficult for you. The threat was clear. And it was exactly what Zoe had been waiting for. Actually, Brandon, you don't know where any of my money is anymore. I moved it all this morning. And as for making things difficult. Zoe smiled even though he couldn't see her. I got news for you. It's about to get much more difficult than you think. She hung up and turned to Nina. Can you drive me somewhere tomorrow morning? Where? The police station. It's time to file those criminal charges. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm was coming. But for the first time in months, Zoe wasn't afraid of it. She was ready to fight. The police station was busier than Zoe expected on a Wednesday morning. She sat in Detective Rodriguez's office with a folder full of documents. Bank statements, credit card applications, forged signatures, text messages. Everything she needed to prove that her husband had committed multiple felonies against her. This is a substantial case, Detective Rodriguez said, flipping through the paperwork. Identity theft, forgery, fraud. The dollar amounts put this into felony territory. What happens next? We'll investigate, interview the parties involved, and present our findings to the district attorney's office. They'll decide whether to file formal charges. How long does that take? Could be a few weeks to a few months depending on complexity. But Mrs. Cole, you should know once we start this process, it's hard to stop. Criminal charges are serious business. Zoe thought about Brandon's text message the night before, his threat to make things difficult for her. His choice had been made clear. "I understand," she said. "File the charges." After leaving the police station, Zoe drove to her house to collect more belongings. Brandon's car wasn't in the driveway, but Dolores's old sedan was parked on the street. She steeled herself and walked to the front door. The house was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, empty takeout containers on the counter, papers scattered across the dining room table. And there, sitting at Zoe's kitchen table like she owned the place, was Dolores Cole. "Well, look who finally came home," Dolores said without looking up from what appeared to be a pile of bills. "Hello, Dolores. I'm just here to get some things. Brandon told me what you did. Freezing the accounts, taking the car. That's cold, Zoe. Real cold." Zoe walked past her toward the stairs. "Where's Brandon?" "At work. Trying to figure out how to fix the mess you've made." Zoe stopped and turned around. "The mess I've made? You know what I mean. All this drama over a little money." "A little money? Dolores, you've racked up $70,000 in debt using my name and credit. I was going to pay it back." "With what? You don't have a job. You live on Social Security. How exactly were you going to pay back $70,000? Dolores waved her hand dismissively. "I had a system. I was close to a big win." "You have a gambling addiction. There is no system. There is no big win coming. Don't you lecture me about gambling. I've been playing cards since before you were born. And look where it's gotten you. Living off stolen money, destroying your son's marriage, facing potential criminal charges." Dolores stood up abruptly. "Criminal charges? I filed a police report this morning. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. Brandon too for his part in it." The older woman's face went pale. "You called the police on your own husband?" "I called the police on the people who stole from me. The fact that one of them is my husband doesn't make the crime less serious. Brandon was just trying to help family. That's what good sons do. Good sons don't commit fraud. Good husbands don't steal from their wives." Dolores sat back down heavily. "You're going to destroy his life over money. He destroyed his own life when he chose to commit crimes instead of getting you help for your addiction." "I don't have an addiction. I just like to play cards." Zoe looked at this woman who had caused so much destruction and felt a mix of pity and anger. "Dolores, you've lost $70,000 in less than 2 years. Money that wasn't even yours. Money that was stolen for you. If that's not addiction, what is?" "I don't have to listen to this from you." "You're right. You don't. Because after today, I'm not going to be around for you to listen to." Zoe went upstairs to pack more clothes and personal items. As she worked, she could hear Dolores on the phone downstairs, her voice getting increasingly agitated. "Brandon, you need to come home right now. She's here and she's talking crazy." "Yes, the police?" "I don't know," she said something about charges. Zoe finished packing and came back downstairs. Dolores was off the phone, sitting at the table with her head in her hands. "He's coming home," Dolores said without looking up. "Good. We need to talk anyway." "Zoe, please. Don't do this to him. He's a good boy. He was just trying to help his mother. By committing crimes. By being loyal to family. Something you apparently don't understand." Zoe sat down across from her mother-in-law. "Dolores, let me ask you something. Did you know Brandon was forging my signature to get money for your gambling?" Dolores was quiet. "Did you know he was using our mortgage payment to cover your casino debts?" Still nothing. "Did you know he was stealing from his own wife to feed your addiction?" "He didn't tell me where the money came from," Dolores said finally. "I just knew he loved me enough to help when I needed it. You didn't ask where a man making $50,000 a year was getting thousands of dollars to give you every month?" "I figured it was savings. Or bonuses. Or you didn't want to know because then you'd have to stop taking it." Dolores looked up, her eyes angry. "You don't know what it's like. After my husband died, after raising Brandon alone, working 2 jobs, sacrificing everything, I deserve a little fun in my life. Fun that cost $70,000 of stolen money? I was going to win it back." "When? After you lost 100,000? 200,000? You don't understand gambling. Sometimes you have to bet big to win big." Zoe stared at her. "You really believe that, don't you? You really think there's some big win coming that will make all this worth it?" "There is. I can feel it." "That's exactly what an addict says, Dolores. That's the addiction talking." The front door opened and Brandon walked in, still wearing his work suit but looking disheveled. His hair was messy, his tie crooked, his face pale. "Zoe, thank God you're here. We need to talk." We talked yesterday, Brandon. You made your choice. I was upset. I didn't mean what I said. Zoe pulled out her phone and showed him the text again. I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother. You sent this to me yesterday. Did you mean it or not? Brandon glanced at his mother, then back at Zoe. It's complicated. No, it's not. Either you choose to enable your mother's gambling addiction, or you choose to save our marriage. Pick one. Why does it have to be a choice? Why can't we all work together to figure this out? Because your mother doesn't think she has a problem. She just told me she's going to win the money back. She thinks the solution to her gambling debt is more gambling. Brandon looked at Dolores. Mom, is that true? I don't have a gambling problem, Dolores said defensively. I just had some bad luck. My luck is about to change. See, Zoe said. She's not interested in getting help. She's not interested in stopping. She wants you to keep funding her addiction. It's not an addiction, Brandon said, but his voice lacked conviction. Brandon, your mother has lost $70,000 of stolen money in less than 2 years. What would you call that? I call it family helping family. I call it enabling. And I call what you did to get that money fraud. Brandon sat down heavily at the table. The police really came to see you? I went to see them. I filed a report. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. They're investigating. Zoe, please. Don't do this. I'll pay you back every penny. How? You don't have $70,000. You used our mortgage payments to fund your mother's gambling. We're behind on every bill. I'll get a second job. I'll work nights, weekends. I'll do whatever it takes. And what about your mother? Are you going to stop giving her money? Brandon looked between Zoe and Dolores. Mom needs help. She needs treatment for her gambling addiction. Not more money to gamble with. I'm not going to any treatment, Dolores said firmly. There's nothing wrong with me. There it is, Zoe said to Brandon. She just told you she's not going to stop gambling. She's not going to get help. She expects you to keep funding her addiction. So what's it going to be? Brandon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She's my mother, Zoe. And I was your wife. Was? Zoe stood up. I'm filing for divorce, Brandon. And legal separation. I'm protecting my assets from any further theft. You can't divorce me over this. I can divorce you for fraud. For financial abuse. For choosing your mother's gambling addiction over our marriage. Zoe, please. I also had a meeting with a mortgage broker this morning. I'm refinancing the house in my name only. You'll need to sign a quitclaim deed. This is my house too. This house that you put into foreclosure by using the mortgage payments for gambling money? This house that I'm saving with my own money? I won't sign anything. Then the court will decide. Along with the criminal charges for fraud. Brandon stood up, his face angry. Fine. You want to play hardball? I can play hardball too. I know where you work. I know your boss. I can make things very uncomfortable for you. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you that if you destroy my life, I'll destroy yours. Zoe pulled out her phone and started recording. Can you repeat that threat, please? For the record. Brandon's face went white. I didn't mean. You meant it exactly. Just like you meant it when you said you'd rather lose your wife than your mother. Zoe stopped recording and put her phone away. Brandon, you've made your choice at every step of this process. You chose to forge my signature. You chose to steal my money. You chose to lie to me about our finances. You chose your mother over our marriage. And now you're choosing to threaten me. She picked up her bags and headed for the door. I'm done making choices for you. From now on, you live with the consequences of your own decisions. Zoe, wait. She turned back one last time. The divorce papers will be served next week. The criminal investigation is ongoing. And Brandon? Don't contact me again unless it's through my lawyer. As she walked to her car, Zoe heard Dolores say to Brandon, Don't worry, honey. She'll calm down. She'll come back. They always do. Zoe smiled grimly as she drove away. Dolores was about to learn just how wrong she could be. 3 days later, Zoe sat in James Rivera's office reviewing the results of their financial investigation. What they had discovered was even worse than she'd initially thought. Your husband has been systematically defrauding you for almost 2 years, James said, pointing to a timeline they'd created. It started small, a few $100s here and there. But as his mother's gambling escalated, so did the theft. Zoe studied the documents spread across the conference table. Bank statements, credit reports, loan applications, all painting a picture of calculated financial abuse. Look at this, James continued, highlighting a credit card application dated 8 months ago. He applied for this card using your social security number and your employment information, but he signed your name and listed his mother as an authorized user. So she had direct access to the card? According to the spending patterns, yes. Look at these charges, they're all at casinos or ATMs located inside casinos. Thousands of dollars every month. Zoe felt sick. I trusted him completely. I gave him access to everything because I thought we were building a life together. That trust is exactly what enabled this level of fraud. He had your social security number, your employment information, access to your mail, knowledge of your financial habits. He could forge your signature because he'd seen it hundreds of times. James pulled out another document. This is particularly concerning. He took out a personal loan for $25,000 using your name and credit. But look at the address he used. Zoe looked at the application. That's his mother's address. So the loan documents were being sent to her house, not yours. You never would have seen the bills or statements. How was he making the payments? He wasn't. The loan is in default. Has been for 3 months. Zoe put her head in her hands. Every time I think I've found the bottom of this, it gets deeper. There's more. James hesitated. The private investigator I hired found some additional information. What kind of information? About your husband's previous relationship. Before you. Zoe looked up. What about it? Her name was Rachel Morrison. They dated for 3 years before you met him. She filed a police report 2 years ago for identity theft and fraud. The office went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Zoe stared at James, processing what he just told her. He did this before? According to the police report, yes. Similar pattern: forged signatures, unauthorized credit cards, money taken to support his mother's gambling. What happened to Rachel? She dropped the charges. The report shows they reached some kind of settlement agreement. She got most of her money back, but the criminal case was dismissed. So he learned that he could get away with it. It appears so. And Zoe, there's something else. The private investigator spoke to Rachel. She said Brandon's mother approached her directly, asking her not to press charges. Apparently, Dolores convinced her that Brandon was just a devoted son trying to help his sick mother. Sick how? That's the thing, there was no illness. It was the same story you're hearing now. Brandon was just helping family. Zoe stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. So this is a pattern. He finds women with good credit and financial stability, gains their trust, then systematically steals from them to fund his mother's gambling. That's what it looks like. And his mother is fully aware of what he's doing. The evidence suggests she's not just aware, she's complicit. Look at this. James showed her another document. These are phone records from his mother's cell phone. Look at the timing of these calls. Zoe looked at the highlighted entries. She called him every time she went to the casino. And look at these. James showed her ATM withdrawal records. Within an hour of each call, Brandon withdrew cash from your joint account. She was calling him for money. In real time. While she was gambling. That's what the pattern suggests, yes. Zoe felt a cold rage building in her chest. This wasn't just fraud. This was a coordinated effort. She was directing him to steal specific amounts at specific times. And based on the timing and amounts, she was likely calling him when she ran out of money during gambling sessions. He was essentially acting as her personal ATM, using your money. Does this change anything legally? It makes the case stronger. It shows premeditation and conspiracy. Instead of just fraud, we're potentially looking at organized financial abuse. Zoe's phone buzzed with a text message. Brandon, can we please talk? I miss you. She showed the message to James. What should I do about his attempts to contact me? Don't respond. Let him communicate through me. And Zoe, save every message he sends. They could be evidence of continued harassment. What about the house? The refinancing is moving forward. Since you can prove the missed payments were due to fraudulent use of the mortgage money, the lender is working with us. You should be able to close on the new loan next week. And if Brandon refuses to sign the quitclaim deed, the court can order it as part of the divorce proceedings. Especially given the evidence of fraud. Zoe's phone rang. Nina. Hey, how did the meeting go? Worse than I thought. Much worse. Can I call you back in a few minutes? After finishing with James, Zoe sat in her car in the parking garage, trying to process everything she'd learned. Brandon wasn't just a weak man who'd made bad choices to help his mother. He was a calculating criminal who'd done this before. And his mother wasn't just a sweet old lady with a gambling problem, she was an active participant in financial fraud. The text messages from Brandon kept coming. I know you're angry, but we can fix this. Mom is really sorry about everything. Please don't throw away our marriage over money. I love you. Doesn't that count for something? Zoe screenshot each message and forwarded them to James. Then she blocked Brandon's number. Her phone rang immediately from an unknown number. Zoe, it's me. Please don't hang up. How did you get this number? I called your office. Look, we need to talk. No, we don't. All communication goes through my lawyer. Zoe, please. Mom wants to apologize to you. She feels terrible about all this. Your mom doesn't feel terrible about anything except getting caught. That's not true. She's really upset. She didn't realize how much trouble this would cause. Brandon, stop lying. I know about Rachel. The line went quiet. I know this isn't the first time you've done this. I know your mother was involved then too. I know you're both professional con artists who target women with good credit. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you found another victim to replace Rachel when she got smart and left you. You're not a victim, Zoe. You're my wife. I was your wife. Now I'm just another woman you stole from. Don't say that. I love you. You don't love me, Brandon. You love my credit score and my bank account. She hung up and immediately called her cell phone provider to change her number. That evening, Zoe sat with Nina in her apartment, going through more documents the private investigator had provided. Look at this, Nina said, holding up a credit report. Rachel had excellent credit before she met Brandon. After 3 years with him, her score had dropped 200 points. Just like mine has. But she got out before it was completely destroyed. You're getting out too. I keep thinking about what his mother said, that I don't understand family loyalty. But this isn't loyalty. This is exploitation. She's been using her own son as a tool to steal from women. That's not a mother protecting her child, that's a predator using her child to find victims. Zoe's new phone rang. James Rivera. Zoe, I have news. The district attorney's office is moving forward with criminal charges. Grand theft, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud. For both Brandon and his mother. Both of them? The evidence of coordination is overwhelming. They're being charged as co-conspirators. What does that mean? It means this is going to be a felony case. It means they're both looking at potential prison time. And it means your civil case for damages just got a lot stronger. After hanging up, Zoe felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for her marriage that was over. But for justice. For consequences. For the possibility that other women wouldn't go through what she and Rachel had experienced. Brandon had made his choice. He'd chosen his mother over his wife, crime over honesty, theft over trust. Now he would live with the consequences of that choice. And Zoe would finally be free. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble columns and echoing footsteps. Zoe walked beside James Rivera, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would determine the next phase of her life. Today was the preliminary hearing for the criminal charges against Brandon and Dolores. Remember, James said as they climbed the steps, you're here as the victim and key witness. Let me do the talking unless the prosecutor asks you direct questions. Inside the courtroom, Zoe saw Brandon for the first time since she'd left the house 2 weeks ago. He sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, looking smaller somehow. Thinner. His usually perfect hair was unkempt, and his suit looked wrinkled. Dolores sat beside him, dressed in what Zoe recognized as her church clothes, a conservative navy dress and modest jewelry. She was clearly playing the role of sweet, innocent grandmother for the judge. The prosecutor, District Attorney Sarah Chin, was younger than Zoe had expected but moved with confidence as she presented the state's case. Your Honor, this is a case of systematic financial fraud spanning nearly 2 years. The defendants engaged in identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud the victim of over $70,000. She laid out the timeline methodically: the forged credit card applications, the unauthorized loans, the coordinated phone calls between mother and son, the pattern of ATM withdrawals timed to casino visits. The evidence shows this was not impulsive behavior or a one-time mistake. This was calculated, ongoing criminal activity designed to fund the defendant Dolores Cole's gambling addiction at the expense of the victim, who trusted her husband completely. Brandon's lawyer, a public defender who looked overwhelmed by the complexity of the case, tried to argue that this was a family dispute being blown out of proportion. Your Honor, Mr. Cole was simply trying to help his elderly mother during a difficult time. While his methods may have been misguided, there was no criminal intent. Misguided? Dachin stood up. Your Honor, forging someone's signature is not misguided, it's fraud. Taking out loans in someone else's name without their knowledge is not family helping family, it's identity theft. She presented the phone records showing the coordination between Dolores and Brandon, the timing of the gambling losses and the thefts, the previous incident with Rachel Morrison. This is a pattern of behavior, Your Honor. These defendants have done this before, and they will do it again unless they face consequences. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, reviewed the evidence carefully. I'm particularly concerned about the scale and duration of this alleged fraud. $70,000 over 2 years suggests deliberate, systematic criminal activity. She set bail at $50,000 each for Brandon and Dolores, with the condition that they have no contact with Zoe and no access to any financial accounts or credit applications. Your Honor, Brandon's lawyer said, my clients cannot afford that amount of bail. Perhaps they should have considered that before allegedly stealing $70,000, the judge replied dryly. Outside the courthouse, James explained what would happen next. They'll either make bail or sit in jail until trial. Either way, they can't contact you or access any credit in your name. The court order protects you. How long until trial? Could be 6 months to a year. But Zoe, I expect they'll want a plea bargain. A felony conviction with this much evidence is almost certain. What kind of plea deal? Probably restitution paying you back plus probation and community service. Maybe some jail time for Brandon since he was the primary perpetrator. As they walked to their cars, Zoe saw a familiar figure approaching. Rachel Morrison, the woman Brandon had defrauded before her. Excuse me, are you Zoe Cole? Thompson Cole. Yes. I'm Rachel Morrison. The prosecutor contacted me about testifying in your case. Rachel was about Zoe's age, blonde, with kind eyes that held a sadness Zoe recognized. I wanted to meet you, Rachel continued, to tell you how sorry I am that this happened to you too. Why did you drop the charges against him? Zoe asked gently. Rachel sighed. His mother came to see me. She cried, told me Brandon was all she had left, that prison would kill him. She promised they would pay me back and that it would never happen again. Did they pay you back? Some of it. Maybe half. And obviously it did happen again. I'm not dropping the charges, Zoe said firmly. Good. Don't. I regret it every day. If I'd followed through, maybe you wouldn't have gone through this. This isn't your fault, Rachel. They're the criminals, not you. Rachel smiled sadly. The prosecutor said you might get full restitution through the criminal case. I hope so. You deserve better than what they did to you. After Rachel left, Zoe sat in her car processing the encounter. She thought about all the women who might come after her if Brandon and Dolores weren't held accountable. Women who would trust, love, and be systematically robbed by people who were supposed to care about them. Her phone rang. Nina. How did it go? They set bail at $50,000 each. I don't think they can afford it. So they're in jail? For now. Nina, I met the woman Brandon did this to before me. Rachel? What was she like? Sad. Regretful. She dropped the charges and only got half her money back. Do you regret not dropping them? Zoe thought about Brandon's text message. I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother. She thought about Dolores sitting in her kitchen, calling her son cold for protecting her own finances. She thought about the coordinated phone calls, the systematic theft, the complete lack of remorse from either of them. No, she said. I don't regret it at all. That evening, Zoe got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Zoe? This is Helen Martinez, Brandon's aunt. His mother's sister. Oh, hello. I wanted to call and apologize for what my sister and nephew did to you. I've been trying to get Dolores help for her gambling for years. Thank you for calling. That means a lot. Zoe, I want you to know that not all of Brandon's family supports what they did. Some of us think they should face consequences. Really? Dolores has been gambling since my brother-in-law died 15 years ago. It started small, but it's gotten worse every year. We've all loaned her money, bailed her out, tried to help. But she just keeps gambling it away. Did you know she was using my money? Not at first. But when Brandon started having money to give her regularly, even though he'd always been broke before, some of us suspected something wasn't right. Why didn't anyone say anything? We tried talking to Brandon, but he got defensive. Said he'd gotten a better job, bonuses, things like that. And honestly, We were relieved that someone else was dealing with Dolores's problems for a while. Zoe understood. Brandon's family had been victims of Dolores's gambling too, in their own way. Helen, can I ask you something? Do you think she'll ever stop gambling? There was a long pause. No, I don't. She's been to treatment twice. It never stuck. She always goes back to the casino. She always finds a way to get money to gamble with. Even if it means stealing? Especially if it means stealing. Addicts don't think about consequences, Zoe. They only think about the next bet, the next game, the next chance to win big. After the call, Zoe realized something important. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Rachel, for Helen and the rest of Brandon's family who'd been manipulated and stolen from, for all the future victims who would cross paths with Brandon and Dolores if they weren't stopped. The criminal case wasn't just about getting her money back. It was about breaking the cycle of abuse and manipulation that had been going on for years. And Zoe was determined to see it through to the end. 2 months into the legal proceedings, Zoe thought she had seen the worst of Brandon and Dolores. She was wrong. The phone call came on a Thursday evening while she was having dinner with Nina. An unknown number which she'd been trained to ignore. But when the same number called 3 times in a row, Nina convinced her to answer. Zoe, please don't hang up. This is important. It was Dolores calling from jail. She had finally made bail. I'm hanging up now, Zoe said. Wait, I'm calling about Brandon. He's in the hospital. Zoe paused, her finger hovering over the end call button. What happened? He had some kind of breakdown. Panic attacks, couldn't breathe. They took him to the emergency room. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not my problem anymore. You're still his wife, Zoe. He needs you. I'm his estranged wife who he defrauded. And you're not supposed to be contacting me. This is an emergency. The court order doesn't apply to emergencies. Zoe looked at Nina, who was shaking her head emphatically. Dolores, Brandon made his choice. He chose you over me, remember? So now you get to deal with the consequences. You're being cruel. He's sick. He's sick because he got caught committing crimes. That's not my fault. He did everything for love. Love for his mother. How can you punish him for loving me? The manipulation was so blatant, so practiced that Zoe almost laughed. He didn't do anything for love, Dolores. He did it for your gambling addiction. I don't have a gambling addiction. You stole $70,000 to gamble with. What would you call that? I was trying to win money to pay you back. By gambling more stolen money? Do you understand how insane that sounds? You don't understand. I had a system. I was so close to winning big. Zoe hung up and immediately called James Rivera. She's not supposed to contact me at all, Zoe told him. This is harassment. Did you record the call? No, I wasn't expecting it. Next time, record everything. And Zoe, don't engage with her. Don't try to reason with her or explain anything. Just hang up and call me. She said Brandon was in the hospital. That's not your responsibility anymore. You're divorcing him. I know. But what? Zoe was quiet for a moment. Nothing. You're right. It's not my problem. But that night, Zoe couldn't sleep. Not because she was worried about Brandon, but because she was angry at herself for feeling anything at all. Part of her still cared about him, despite everything he'd done. That part was small and getting smaller every day, but it was still there. The next morning, James called with news. The prosecution received a plea offer from Brandon's lawyer. What kind of offer? He'll plead guilty to fraud and identity theft in exchange for 5 years probation and full restitution. No jail time. What about Dolores? Her lawyer is claiming she was just an unwitting beneficiary. That she didn't know the money was stolen. Zoe laughed bitterly. Unwitting beneficiary? She was calling him during casino trips asking for specific amounts of money. I know. The prosecutor isn't buying it either. They're offering her 2 years in prison plus restitution. What do you think I should do about Brandon's plea offer? That's up to you. 5 years probation is significant and you get your money back. But if you reject the plea, it goes to trial and there's always some risk. What kind of risk? Juries can be unpredictable. They might feel sorry for him, think his mother manipulated him, decide he was just a weak man who made bad choices. Instead of a calculating criminal who systematically stole from his wife? Exactly. The facts are on your side, but emotions can complicate things. Zoe thought about it for a day before deciding. She called James back. I want to reject the plea offer. Are you sure? I'm sure. 5 years probation isn't enough. He needs to face real consequences, and other potential victims need to see that this behavior leads to prison. What about the risk of losing at trial? I'd rather take that risk than let him walk away with a slap on the wrist. Okay. I'll let the prosecutor know. 3 days later, Zoe was working late when building security called. Miss Thompson? There's a woman here asking to see you. Says she's family. What's her name? Dolores Cole. Zoe's blood ran cold. Do not let her up. Call the police. Ma'am? She's violating a court order by being here. Call the police and have her arrested. 20 minutes later, Zoe watched from her office window as police officers escorted Dolores away in handcuffs. Her phone was ringing. James Rivera. I heard about the incident at your office. This is good for our case. How is this good? She's now violated the court order twice. Once by calling you, once by showing up at your workplace. The judge is going to revoke her bail. So she goes back to jail? Until trial, yes. And it shows complete disregard for court authority, which doesn't help her case. What about Brandon? He's been staying with his lawyer's advice, no contact with you at all. But his mother's behavior reflects poorly on both of them. That weekend, Zoe finally felt ready to do something she'd been putting off, clearing out the rest of her belongings from the house. Nina came with her for moral support. The house felt different, smaller somehow. Dirty dishes were piled everywhere, mail was scattered across counters, and it smelled like old takeout food. He really fell apart after you left, Nina observed. Good. Maybe now he understands what consequences feel like. In the bedroom, Zoe found something that made her stomach turn. A stack of credit card offers addressed to her, opened and scattered across Brandon's dresser. Applications for new cards, pre-approved offers, debt consolidation loans. Nina, look at this. Nina examined the papers. He was still trying to get credit in your name. Even after you left. Even after he was arrested for fraud. This is evidence, right? More charges. Definitely. Zoe took pictures of everything with her phone. As they loaded the last of her belongings into Nina's truck, a car pulled into the driveway. Brandon got out, looking worse than she'd ever seen him. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes red and hollow. Zoe, I've been hoping you'd come back. I'm not back. I'm getting my things. Can we talk? Please? Nina stepped between them. She doesn't want to talk to you, Brandon. This is between me and my wife. Your soon-to-be ex-wife, Zoe corrected. And we have nothing to discuss. I know you're angry. I know I messed up. But Zoe, I love you. Doesn't that count for anything? Zoe looked at this man she'd once planned to spend her life with. The man who'd stolen from her, lied to her, chosen his mother's addiction over their marriage, threatened her, and tried to continue defrauding her even after being arrested. No, she said simply. It doesn't count for anything. How can you say that? We were happy. We had plans. We were never happy, Brandon. I was happy because I didn't know who you really were. You were happy because you found another victim. That's not true. Then tell me something. If I came back, if I dropped all the charges, if I forgave everything, would you stop giving money to your mother? Brandon was quiet. Would you get her into treatment for her gambling addiction? Still nothing. Would you put our marriage and our financial future ahead of enabling her destructive behavior? Brandon looked at the ground. She's my mother, Zoe. There's your answer. Even now, even after everything that's happened, you'd choose her addiction over our marriage. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. It's exactly that simple. You made your choice, Brandon. Now live with it. As they drove away, Nina asked, How do you feel? Free, Zoe said, and realized she meant it. For the first time in months, I feel completely free. The next chapter of her life was about to begin. And Brandon and Dolores wouldn't be part of it. The trial began on a gray Monday morning in March. Zoe sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching as Brandon and Dolores were led to the defendant's table. Dolores looked frail and vulnerable in her conservative dress, clearly coached by her lawyer on how to appear sympathetic. Brandon looked defeated, his shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact with everyone. District Attorney Sarah Chin opened with a methodical presentation of the evidence. Financial records, phone logs, ATM surveillance footage, testimony from bank employees who remembered Brandon making large cash withdrawals. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she said, this case is about trust, betrayal, and greed. The defendants systematically stole over $70,000 from Zoe Thompson Cole through identity theft, fraud, and forgery. They did this not once but repeatedly over 2 years. They did this not accidentally but deliberately. And they did this not alone but together. She walked the jury through the timeline, showing how Brandon had gained Zoe's trust, access to her personal information and control over their finances. Then she demonstrated the coordination between mother and son. You'll see phone records showing that Dolores Cole called her son from casino floors when she ran out of money. Within minutes of these calls, Brandon Cole would withdraw cash from his wife's accounts. This wasn't a son helping his mother in an emergency, this was a planned, coordinated theft operation. Brandon's lawyer tried to paint him as a devoted son manipulated by a sick mother. Brandon Cole is guilty of poor judgment and misplaced loyalty, but not criminal intent. He was trying to help the woman who raised him alone, who sacrificed everything for him. But when DHN cross-examined Brandon, the facade cracked quickly. Mr. Cole, you testified that you were just trying to help your mother. Is that correct? Yes. And you said you always intended to pay your wife back? Yes. Mr. Cole, I'm showing you Exhibit 47 credit card offers found in your bedroom after your wife left you. These offers are addressed to Mrs. Thompson Cole, but they've been opened. Can you explain that? Brandon's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed the question. I was just looking at them. Looking at them? Or planning to fill them out? I don't know. Mr. Cole, this was 3 weeks after you were arrested for fraud. 3 weeks after you'd already been caught stealing from your wife. Were you planning to apply for more credit in her name? No. Then why were the applications opened? Why were they in your bedroom instead of thrown away? Brandon had no answer. Mr. Cole, you testified that you love your wife. Is that true? Yes. And you said you never meant to hurt her? That's right. Mr. Cole, I'm showing you a text message you sent to your wife on February 14th. Can you read it to the jury? Brandon's face went pale. I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother. You sent that to the woman you claimed to love, after she discovered you'd been stealing from her? I was upset. I didn't mean it. But you sent it. And then when your wife left you because of your crimes, did you stop giving money to your mother? She's my mother. That's not what I asked. After your wife left, after she filed criminal charges, did you stop enabling your mother's gambling? Brandon was quiet. Mr. Cole, yes or no, did you stop giving money to your mother for gambling after your wife left you? She needed help. So the answer is no. Even after losing your wife, even after being arrested, you continued to prioritize your mother's gambling addiction over taking responsibility for your crimes. When Dolores took the stand, her performance as a sweet, confused grandmother fell apart under cross-examination. Mrs. Cole, you testified that you didn't know the money your son gave you was stolen. Is that correct? Yes, I thought it was his money. But you knew your son made $50,000 a year as an accountant, correct? I suppose. And you knew you were receiving thousands of dollars from him every month? He's a good son. Mrs. Cole, in 2023, you received over $30,000 from your son. That's more than half his annual salary. Did that seem reasonable to you? I didn't think about it. You didn't think about where a man making $50,000 a year was getting $30,000 to give away? He said he got bonuses. Mrs. Cole, I'm showing you your phone records. You called your son 47 times from casino locations in 2023. Can you explain that? I don't remember. You don't remember calling your son almost once a week from casinos? Sometimes I called him when I was out. And what did you talk about? Family things. Mrs. Cole, let me read you a transcript of one of these calls, recorded by casino security. You said, Brandon, I need $1,500. I'm down bad but I feel a big win coming. Can you bring cash? Does that sound like family conversation to you? Dolores's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The jury had heard clear evidence that she was actively directing the thefts. Mrs. Cole, how much money did you lose gambling in 2023? I don't keep track. According to casino records, you lost $73,000. Does that sound right? I wouldn't know. Mrs. Cole, that's more money than most people make in a year. Where did you think it was coming from? I thought Brandon was doing well. You thought your son, making $50,000 a year, could afford to lose $73,000 gambling? I thought he was helping me because he loved me. By stealing from his wife? I didn't know he was stealing. Mrs. Cole, you've been gambling for 15 years. You've lost money from multiple family members. You've been to treatment twice. Are you really telling this jury that you're not aware your gambling is a problem? It's not a problem. I just have bad luck sometimes. Bad luck that cost $70,000 a year? I was going to win it back. The courtroom was silent. Dolores had just admitted she knew exactly how much she was losing, contradicting her earlier testimony that she didn't keep track. So you did know how much you were losing? Dolores's lawyer tried to object, but she answered anyway. I was keeping track so I'd know how much to win back. And you planned to win it back by gambling more stolen money? It wasn't stolen. Mrs. Cole, you just heard your son testify that he took this money from his wife's accounts without her permission. How is that not stealing? She's family. Family helps family. So you believe family members have the right to steal from each other? It's not stealing when it's family. The jury looked horrified. Dolores had just argued that theft was acceptable as long as it was committed against relatives. When Zoe took the stand, she told her story simply and clearly. The debt collector's call, finding the forged signatures, Brandon's confession, his choice to prioritize his mother over their marriage. Mrs. Thompson Cole, how has this affected your life? It destroyed my marriage, damaged my credit, and cost me $70,000. But more than that, it destroyed my trust. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust someone completely again. Do you believe the defendants should face consequences for their actions? I believe they should face the same consequences anyone else would face for committing these crimes. Theft is theft, fraud is fraud, regardless of the relationship between the perpetrator and victim. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdicts. On the charge of identity theft, we find the defendant Brandon Cole guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant Brandon Cole guilty. On the charge of forgery, we find the defendant Brandon Cole guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant Dolores Cole guilty. On the charge of identity theft, we find the defendant Dolores Cole guilty. Brandon put his head in his hands. Dolores sat stone-faced, refusing to show any emotion. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. As court adjourned, Zoe felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd been carrying for months. Outside the courthouse, Diachin approached her. Zoe, I wanted you to know this was one of the clearest cases of financial abuse I've ever prosecuted. Your documentation and testimony made all the difference. What happens now? Sentencing in 2 weeks. Given the amount involved and the defendant's complete lack of remorse, I expect significant prison time for both of them. And restitution? Full restitution plus interest and penalties. They'll be paying you back for years to come. As Zoe walked to her car, she thought about the text message that had started this whole legal journey. I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother. Brandon had gotten his wish. He'd kept his mother and lost his wife. Now they could both face the consequences together. 6 months after the trial, Zoe stood in the doorway of her new office, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Thompson Marketing Solutions occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise, and every detail reflected her vision and hard work. Miss Thompson? Her assistant, Kelly, appeared with a cup of coffee and a stack of contracts. The Henderson Group is here for the presentation. Give me 5 minutes, then send them in. Zoe had started her own marketing consultancy 3 months after the divorce was finalized. Using part of the restitution money as startup capital, she built a business that specialized in helping small companies grow their digital presence. Word had spread quickly about her innovative strategies and ethical business practices. The Henderson Group deal would be her biggest client, yet a contract worth more than she'd made in salary the previous year. Good morning, everyone, she said, walking into the conference room where 5 executives waited. Let's talk about transforming your brand. The presentation went perfectly. By noon, she had a signed contract and a new client relationship that would anchor her business for the next 2 years. Congratulations, Kelly said as the Henderson team left. That was impressive. It feels good to be building something that's completely mine, Zoe replied. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. Lunch tomorrow? I want to hear about the Henderson deal. Another text came in from Cameron Wells, the attorney she'd been dating for the past month. They'd met at a professional networking event, and he'd asked her out after a conversation about business ethics that lasted 2 hours. Dinner tonight? I promise not to talk about legal cases all evening. Zoe smiled as she responded, Deal. Pick me up at 7. The relationship with Cameron was different from anything she'd experienced. They were equals, 2 professionals who respected each other's careers and independence. He made her laugh, challenged her intellectually, and never once asked her to compromise her values or priorities. That afternoon, James Rivera called with an update. Brandon was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Dolores got 2 years. Both sentences include full restitution plus damages. How much total? $87,000 including interest and penalties. They'll be making payments for the next 10 years, assuming they can find work when they get out. Any word on appeals? Brandon's lawyer filed one, but it's unlikely to succeed. The evidence was overwhelming and the jury verdict was unanimous. After hanging up, Zoe realized she felt nothing about Brandon's sentence. No satisfaction, no sadness, no anger. Just nothing. He had become irrelevant to her life, a chapter that was completely closed. Her phone rang. Helen Martinez, Brandon's aunt. Zoe, I wanted to call and thank you. Thank me? For following through with the charges. For not letting them get away with it. How is the family handling it? Relief mostly. We've all been victims of Dolores's manipulation for years. Seeing her face real consequences, it's liberating. What about Brandon? He's getting therapy in prison. For the first time in his life, he's away from his mother's influence. Some of us think this might actually help him. I hope so. Not for my sake but for his. Zoe, can I ask you something? Do you ever regret how hard you fought this? Zoe considered the question. No. Not for a second. They were counting on me being too embarrassed, too trusting, too forgiving to hold them accountable. They were wrong. Good for you. And Zoe? I hope you find happiness. I already have. That evening, Cameron picked her up in his sensible hybrid car. No flashy displays of wealth. No need to impress anyone. They went to a small Italian restaurant where the owner knew Cameron by name and the food was amazing. How was the Henderson presentation? He asked over wine. Perfect. The contract is signed. I'm proud of you. Building your own business while dealing with a criminal case and divorce that takes incredible strength. It wasn't strength, Zoe said. It was necessity. I had to rebuild my life from scratch. And look what you built. A successful business, financial independence, a future that's entirely your own. They talked about everything: work, family, books, travel plans. Cameron listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, shared his own experiences. There was no sense that he was evaluating her, judging her, or trying to control the conversation. Can I ask you something? He said as they shared dessert. Of course. Are you completely over what happened with your ex-husband? Zoe thought about it. I'm over him. I'm over the anger. I'm over feeling like a victim. But I'm not over the lesson. Which is? That I'm capable of protecting myself. That I don't need anyone else to rescue me or validate me or complete me. I can build a life that's entirely my own. And there's room in that life for someone else? For the right someone, yes. Someone who adds to my life instead of taking from it. Cameron smiled. I'd like to apply for that position. 2 weeks later, Zoe got a call that surprised her. Rachel Morrison, the woman Brandon had defrauded before her. Zoe, I saw the news about the sentencing. I wanted to thank you. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. When I dropped the charges against Brandon, I enabled him to do the same thing to you. If I'd followed through, you never would have gone through this. Rachel, you can't blame yourself for their choices. I know. But I can learn from them. I wanted you to know that I've started volunteering with a support group for victims of financial abuse. I tell my story and yours to help other women recognize the warning signs. That's wonderful. The group meets twice a month. Would you consider speaking to them sometime? Zoe had never thought about sharing her story publicly, but the idea intrigued her. Send me the details. I'd be honored to help. 3 months later, Zoe stood before a group of 20 women in a community center conference room. Some were currently dealing with financial abuse, others were healing from it, all were looking for hope. My name is Zoe Thompson, she began, and I'm here to tell you that you can survive this. You can rebuild. You can create a life that's better than anything you've lost. She told them about the debt collector's call, the forged signatures, the choice she'd made to fight back. She talked about the legal battle, the emotional journey, the process of rebuilding her finances and her trust. The hardest part wasn't the money, she said. It was accepting that someone I loved had deliberately hurt me. But once I accepted that, once I stopped making excuses for him and started protecting myself, everything changed. A woman in the front row raised her hand. How do you trust again? Slowly, carefully. But most importantly, you start by trusting yourself. Trust your instincts, trust your judgment, trust your ability to handle whatever comes next. Another woman asked, do you regret the marriage? No, because it taught me who I really am. It taught me that I'm stronger than I knew, more capable than I believed, and more valuable than I was allowing myself to be treated. After the meeting, several women approached her with their own stories. Stories of husbands who stole, boyfriends who manipulated, family members who exploited trust and love for financial gain. "Thank you," one woman said. "I've been making excuses for my husband's spending for 2 years. Tomorrow I'm opening my own bank account." Driving home that night, Zoe reflected on how far she'd come. A year ago, she'd been a woman who let someone else control her finances, who prioritized keeping peace over protecting herself, who believed that love meant tolerating harmful behavior. Now she was a successful business owner, a criminal justice advocate, and a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cameron. "How did the speaking engagement go?" "Life-changing. In the best way. Can't wait to hear about it. See you tomorrow?" "Absolutely." Zoe smiled as she pulled into the driveway of her house, the house she'd refinanced in her name only, decorated according to her taste only, and paid for with money she'd earned through her own hard work. Tomorrow would bring new clients, new opportunities, new possibilities. And for the first time in her adult life, every choice she made would be entirely her own. 2 years after the trial, Zoe woke up in her renovated bedroom to sunlight streaming through the skylights she'd had installed. The house barely resembled the place she'd shared with Brandon. New floors, new kitchen, new colors throughout. It was a physical representation of her completely transformed life. "Good morning, beautiful," Cameron said, appearing in the doorway with coffee and a smile. "Good morning yourself." She accepted the coffee gratefully. They'd moved in together 6 months ago, and every day felt like a conscious choice rather than a default obligation. Ready for the big day? Today was special. Zoe was opening the second location of Thompson Marketing Solutions, and she'd been invited to speak at a national conference on financial fraud prevention. But first, she had a meeting that would close the final chapter of her old life. James Rivera called as she was getting dressed. "Zoe, I have some news about the restitution payments." "What kind of news?" "Brandon's been making regular payments from prison. He's working in the prison library and sending every penny he earns. He's also signed over his interest in his mother's house." "Really?" "His mother defaulted on the payments months ago. Apparently, she started gambling again the day she got out of prison. Brandon had to choose between enabling her or honoring his debt to you. And he chose to pay me back? It seems prison and therapy have given him some perspective on his priorities. He's written you a letter if you're interested in reading it." Zoe thought about it. "Send it to me. I'll decide later if I want to read it." The drive to the new office location took 30 minutes through downtown traffic. Thompson Marketing Solutions now employed 15 people and served clients across 3 states. What had started as a survival necessity had become a thriving enterprise built on ethics, transparency, and genuine value for clients. "Miss Thompson?" Kelly appeared as Zoe walked into the new space. "The grand opening is set for noon. The mayor's office confirmed she'll be here for the ribbon cutting." "Excellent. Any word from the conference organizers?" "Your speech is scheduled for 2 o'clock. They're expecting over 500 attendees." The ribbon cutting went perfectly. Local business leaders, clients, employees, and friends gathered to celebrate Thompson Marketing Solutions' expansion. Nina was there with her family, Cameron's parents had driven in from out of state, and Helen Martinez had even come to show support. "I'm so proud of you," Nina said during the reception. "Look what you built from nothing." "Not from nothing," Zoe corrected. "From the ashes of a life that wasn't really mine. This is what I was always supposed to be doing." The conference was at the convention center downtown. As Zoe prepared backstage, she thought about the first time she'd told her story to Rachel's support group. Now she was addressing financial industry professionals, law enforcement officers, and victim advocates from across the country. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zoe Thompson, founder of Thompson Marketing Solutions and advocate for financial fraud victims." Zoe walked to the podium, looking out at an audience of hundreds. She began with the story they'd come to hear: the debt collector's call, the systematic theft, the legal battle. But then she shifted to something more important. "Financial abuse thrives in silence and shame," she said. "Victims often blame themselves, making excuses for their abusers, believing that love means tolerance of harmful behavior. But here's what I learned. Love never requires you to accept abuse. Trust never requires you to ignore red flags. Loyalty never requires you to enable destructive behavior." She talked about the warning signs: gradual control over finances, secrecy about money, family pressure to forgive and forget, threats of consequences for seeking help. "The most important thing I can tell potential victims is this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone is asking you to compromise your financial security for their benefit, That's not love, it's exploitation. The applause was sustained and enthusiastic. During the Q&A session, a woman asked, "What would you say to someone who's currently experiencing financial abuse but is afraid to leave?" "I'd say that fear is normal and rational. Leaving an abuser is difficult and sometimes dangerous. But I'd also say that staying is guaranteed to get worse. Abusers escalate. They don't reform without consequences. And every day you stay is another day of damage to your finances, your credit, and your future." After the conference, Zoe drove home to find Cameron in the kitchen preparing dinner. The domestic scene felt surreal, sometimes a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than control and manipulation. "How did the speech go?" he asked, kissing her hello. "Really well. I think we might have reached some people who needed to hear it. I'm proud of you. And not just for the speech, for everything you've built." They had dinner on the back patio Zoe had designed herself. The garden was blooming, the solar lights she'd installed created a peaceful ambience, and the space felt completely hers. "Cameron, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever worry that I'm too independent? Too focused on my own success?" He laughed. "That's like asking if I worry that you're too smart or too kind. Your independence is one of the things I love most about you." "Really?" "Zoe, you survived betrayal, rebuilt your life from scratch, created a successful business, and turned your trauma into advocacy for other victims. You're the strongest person I know. Why would I want you to be anything less than that?" That evening, Zoe finally read Brandon's letter. It was handwritten on prison stationery, and his penmanship was careful and deliberate. "Dear Zoe, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to respond to this letter. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take full responsibility for my actions without expecting anything in return. I stole from you. I lied to you. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. I chose my mother's addiction over our marriage, and I convinced myself that was love instead of enabling. Prison has given me perspective I never had before. Away from my mother's influence, I can see clearly for the first time how toxic our relationship was. She's an addict and I was her enabler. You were both our victim. I'm sending you every penny I earn because it's the right thing to do, not because I expect it to fix what I broke. I know I can never repair the damage I did to your life, your trust, or your financial security. I want you to know that you were right to press charges. You were right to protect yourself. You were right to prioritize your own well-being over my family's dysfunction. I hope you found happiness. You deserve a life filled with people who value and protect you the way I should have but failed to do. I'm sorry for everything. Brandon." Zoe folded the letter and put it in her desk drawer. It was the first genuine accountability she'd ever heard from him, but it didn't change anything. He was still serving his sentence, still paying restitution, still learning to live with the consequences of his choices. Her phone rang. Rachel Morrison. "Zoe, I wanted to give you an update on the support group. We've helped 12 women leave abusive financial situations this year." "That's amazing. And we've started a scholarship fund for women who need legal help but can't afford attorneys. Would Thompson Marketing Solutions consider being a sponsor?" "Absolutely. Send me the details." "Zoe, I also wanted to tell you I got engaged." "Congratulations. Tell me about him." "His name is Michael. He's a teacher, completely different from anyone I've dated before. He's supportive of my advocacy work, he encourages my independence, and he's never once asked to handle my finances." "That sounds perfect. It took me a long time to trust again after Brandon. But meeting you, seeing how you rebuilt your life, it gave me hope that I could do the same." After the call, Zoe sat in her home office looking at the vision board she'd created 2 years ago. Pictures of her dream house, achieved, her own business, exceeded expectations, speaking at conferences, done, helping other victims, ongoing, finding healthy love, found. At the bottom of the board was a quote she'd written in her own handwriting: "I am worthy of love that protects, partnership that empowers, and a life that's entirely my own." Cameron appeared in the doorway. "What are you thinking about?" "How different my life is now compared to 3 years ago." "Better?" "Immeasurably better. Not just because the bad things are gone, but because I know who I really am now. I know what I'm capable of." "Any regrets?" Zoe thought about Brandon in prison, about Dolores gambling away the family house, about the year of legal battles and emotional healing. "No regrets. Everything that happened led me here." "And where is here?" She looked around her office, at the business she'd built, at the man who loved and supported her success, at the life she'd created through her own choices and hard work. "Here is exactly where I'm supposed to be." 6 months later, Zoe stood before another audience, this time at a university, talking to business students about entrepreneurship and ethical leadership. After the presentation, a young woman approached her. "Miss Thompson, my boyfriend has been asking to manage my money because he says he's better with finances. After hearing your story, I'm realizing that might not be a good idea." "Trust your instincts," Zoe said. "Financial independence is one of the most important things you can maintain in any relationship. Even if he gets upset about it? Especially if he gets upset about it. Someone who loves you wants you to be financially secure and independent. Someone who gets angry about your financial autonomy is someone to be very careful around." The student thanked her and left, and Zoe felt the familiar satisfaction of potentially preventing someone else from experiencing what she'd been through. That evening, Cameron surprised her with dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first date. "What's the occasion?" Zoe asked. 3 years since you filed those criminal charges. 3 years since you chose to fight instead of surrender. You remember that date?" "I remember everything about your story. It's the story of the strongest person I've ever met." They ordered wine and talked about their future. Trips they wanted to take, goals for the business, the possibility of marriage and children. All conversations that felt exciting rather than threatening because they were based on equality and choice rather than control and obligation. "Zoe, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Would you marry me?" The question should have surprised her, but it didn't. Their relationship had been building toward this moment for months, and it felt natural and right. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "But I'm keeping my name in my business. I wouldn't want it any other way." As they celebrated their engagement, Zoe thought about the text message that had changed her life. "I'd rather lose my wife than lose my mother." Brandon had made his choice, and it had led to prison, isolation, and years of debt. She had made different choices to fight, to rebuild, to trust herself, to demand better. Those choices had led to success, love, and a future full of possibilities. The final chapter of her story wasn't about revenge or justice, though both had been important parts of her journey. It was about transformation from victim to victor, from dependent to independent, from surviving to thriving. And every day going forward would be a conscious choice to continue building the life she deserved. 5 years after that first debt collector's call, Zoe Thompson Wells, she'd hyphenated her name after marrying Cameron, stood in the boardroom of the Fortune 500 company that had just acquired Thompson Marketing Solutions for 8 figures. "Mrs. Thompson Wells," the CEO said, "we're honored to have you joining our executive team." Zoe smiled, thinking about how far she'd traveled from that confused woman who trusted someone else to manage her finances. Now she was a millionaire entrepreneur, a national speaker on financial fraud prevention, and a board member of 3 victim advocacy organizations. Brandon had been released from prison the previous year. According to Helen Martinez, he'd found work as a bookkeeper, lived in a modest apartment, and continued making restitution payments. He'd never remarried and had minimal contact with his mother, who was back in treatment for gambling addiction. Zoe felt no satisfaction in his struggles and no bitterness about the past. He was simply irrelevant to her life now, a chapter that had closed completely. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cameron. "Congratulations on the acquisition. Can't wait to celebrate tonight." Another text from Nina. "My little sister the millionaire. Mom and Dad would be so proud." And one from Rachel. "Saw the news about the acquisition. You continue to inspire all of us." That evening, Zoe and Cameron sat on their back patio, watching the sunset and planning their honeymoon trip to Italy. "Any regrets about selling the business?" Cameron asked. "None. It served its purpose. It gave me independence and security. Now it's time for the next adventure." "Which is?" "I'm thinking about law school. Specializing in financial crimes." Cameron laughed. "Of course you are. From victim to advocate to prosecutor. Why not? I know the system from every angle. I might as well use that knowledge to help other people." "I love that about you. You never stop growing." Zoe looked at her husband, at their beautiful home, at the life they'd built together based on mutual respect and shared values. She thought about the women she'd helped through her speaking and advocacy work, the business she'd built from nothing, the strength she'd discovered in herself. "You know what the best part is?" she said. "What?" "Every single thing in my life right now is here because I chose it. Not because someone told me to want it, or because I was afraid to leave it, or because I didn't think I deserved better. I chose all of this. And I chose you," Cameron said, taking her hand. "We chose each other," Zoe corrected. "And we keep choosing each other every day." As the stars came out, Zoe reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It had started with betrayal, theft, and the collapse of everything she thought she knew about her life. But it had led to strength, success, and a happiness she'd never imagined possible. The debt collector's call that had seemed like the worst moment of her life had actually been the beginning of the best part of her life. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are exactly what we need to become who we're supposed to be. And sometimes, losing everything is the only way to discover what we're truly capable of gaining.